Starting us off with number 10, the double. Now this one was shared by Reddit user Suspicious Palm Tree, who said she lived in a house that was built back in the 1800s. Now being built at the time that it survived through both world wars and a lot more shit, one of which being the previous owner's two sons committing inside of it. When the user and her family moved in, they noticed strange happenings straight away. Their dog and parrots would randomly wake up from a nap and follow something with their heads like some entity was walking around. Every animal's head was following the same pattern, so clearly they were all looking at the same thing. The user's brother would never sleep in his room growing up because he claimed he kept hearing people talk to him. The user herself had her room in the attic and would have to pass through the empty second floor where there were motion activated lights. But the lights would randomly just turn on during the middle of the night despite no human being around at all. I mean, we're seeing a pattern. Too soon. Coming in at number 9 is the overdose. Now this one was shared anonymously on Thought Catalog, and it said that the user's sister and her daughter moved into a townhouse apartment complex when the daughter was about 4 years old. Now the night they moved in, the mum ran into her daughter's room after hearing her screaming about a man who was in her room yelling at her. There was no man there despite the mum literally searching everywhere. Windows, doors, everything was locked, so the mum put her to sleep and went back to her room. The same thing continued to happen the next few days, and soon the daughter stopped sleeping there altogether and wouldn't even go into that room. One day while the two were at the playground, the mum started talking to another mum who lived at the complex, and she started talking about how scary it was that the person living in the apartment before the user's sister had died of a overdose, and she had no idea that had even happened. After doing some more research, the mum found out the guy's bedroom was where her daughter's room was, so I mean, go figure, the man yelling. She managed to find a picture of him on his obituary, and when the daughter saw the photo, she ran out of the room screaming, saying that was the man. At number 8 we have the Colonial house. This one was shared by XCO on Reddit, who said she used to live with 3 of her friends at this huge 1840s colonial house that had like 80 plus acres of state wildlife property around it. We're talking super bougie and super colonial. Now everyone's bedrooms lined the upstairs hall, and it was on their 3rd night in the house where things got weird. Now the user heard her doorknob rattle like someone was messing around with it, and then she heard it happen to the door next to hers, and so on. The next morning she was confronted and asked why she was messing with the logs, because the other housemates had already said they hadn't touched them, but neither had the user. Brushing off, the housemates ended up doing nothing about it. A week later, the user felt this intense urge to get out of bed. She laid still in bed contemplating if a noise had woken her up or something, but at 3 AM she eventually ventured out of her bedroom, and she saw all her roommates leave their rooms and come out at the exact same time as her, all claiming they felt this huge urge to leave their beds. That's a bit creepy, I'm not gonna lie. Just imagine at 3 AM everyone just leaves their room at the same time. That's some cult ass right there. Filling at number 7 slot is the figure. This one's from Redditor Den Home 2, who said when he was around 9 or 10, he was living with his dad. The place they had was this terrace house built sometime in the 1800s, and he noticed weird things happening when no one else was in the house. Why all these haunted houses made in the 1800s? I feel like that wasn't a good time for anyone. Now in terms of strange happenings, I'm talking footsteps above them when both were in the same room downstairs. One night the user was in bed and woke up realizing their bedroom door was open despite always closing it before they slept. When his eyes focused, he suddenly saw this 7-foot tall shadow figure standing at the end of his bed just watching him. When the figure realized the user was looking back at him, it seemed to literally disintegrate into the floor, and the door just closed by itself. Who dat know? Now at number 6 is the Skeptic. This one was shared by Reddit user Tickleon, who said he lived in a house that was haunted for about 5 years. Before moving in, he was told about the paranormal activity that occurred in the house, but he sort of just brushed it off. Now the user never saw a full apparition of a ghost right in front of him, but so many things happened that he found very hard to rationalize to himself, like hearing the sound of children laughing or knocking on the doors despite him having no kids, light bulbs smashing onto the ground because they had somehow removed themselves from their metal bases, furniture moving from one side of the room to the literal middle, and so forth. But that's all cliche ghost stuff that we've heard before. He said what bothered him was that on the same day every year, 2 parts of the house would stink of the smell of something burning. You could just tell, you know when you step into an area that smells horrible and then you step out and you're like, oh, doesn't smell so bad over here. He finished his Reddit post by saying, hey, at least no dead girls coming out of TVs. Lol, I mean, yes, it could be worse. You are right there. You're not wrong. Yeah, speaking facts. Coming in at number 5 are the Lynchs. Now the time was around the mid 1800s and the wealthy Luce Chase Sprague had lost her fortune and died penniless at the Sprague mansion located on Cranston Street, Rhode Island. Fast forward to 1967, Robert and Viola Lynch decided to move into the 28-bedroom house that came with its own doll room, which I don't know why they didn't get rid of, but anyway. Like, that's very creepy. Ghostly things would happen to the couple. Their blankets would be pulled and thrown off them in the middle of the night. They'd wake up with furniture knocked over to the side and rooms with their lights on that hadn't been used in a while, because let's face it, they do have 28 rooms, like let's be real, not all of them are in use. The couple decided to use a Ouija board to try and calm whatever was in the house, and they contacted an entity that spelled out "Tell my story." Now in a plot twist turn of events, the entity was the ghost of Amasa Sprague, whose murdered, bludgeoned body was found near the house back in 1843. The family ended up moving away because they were like, screw that, but paranormal experts who have investigated their house since have physically seen the doll's eyes in that room moving. Unexplained lights have also been found, so I mean, let's just not move into the Sprague mansion, shall we? At number 4 is the McPike Mansion. Alton, Illinois has been dubbed one of the most haunted places in the whole of America. In it we find the 16-bedroom McPike Mansion built by Henry McPike for his family back in 1869. Come the 1900s, the house was sold to Paul Leitchinger, who used to rent the room out to different boarders, the Airbnbs of yore. Now either way, he was not given a 5-star rating because multiple boarders complained about hearing the sounds of children talking and laughing together despite children not even being in the vicinity. When Paul finally died, the mansion sat empty for 50 years before Sharon and George Ludke bought it as a passion project. But within days of moving in, Sharon noticed this ghost man that would stare at her through the window while she was out gardening. The couple also caught floating orbs on camera and doors opening on their own. Paranormal investigators claim the most active room in the house is the wine cellar. I mean, at least the afterlife know how to have a good time. I'll give them that. Filling at number 3 slot is The Man. This one comes from RagXDoll on Reddit, who said her father-in-law died in her house long before her son was born, so sadly they never had a chance to meet. After he was born though, there'd be many nights where she'd hear him laughing to himself, which didn't really strike her as odd since kids literally get amused by anything. One day though, she was just hanging up family pictures around the house, and of course the father-in-law was in quite a few of them. When her son finally saw them, he asked, "Oh mommy, why do you have a picture of the man that comes and plays with me at night?" Mind you, they'd never met and he'd never seen a picture of him before. That's kind of cute though, that like the father-in-law is just like the ghost of him is just playing with his like grandson. That's cute. Now at number 2 are the husbands. Now, this one was shared by Reddit user I Most Likely Need Help, and I mean, don't we all, my friend, don't we all? Either way, they shared that their dad decided to buy a house that came with its fair share of baggage, let's just say. The woman who lived there before them had 2 husbands die on her in the house. The first hung himself in the garage, whilst the second died in bed in the basement. Now unfortunately, the user's bedroom was also in the basement, and she claimed that she felt like she was being watched 24/7. The basement also had a secret storage room behind a bookshelf that had a locking latch on it, yet every morning she'd find it open. It happened so frequently that the user would wake up in the middle of the night to lock it and still find it open the next morning. The garage was no different. The user would see light coming from under the door, but when she opened it, it would be pitch black. So where's this light coming from? The place was airtight, yet she'd still see the blades that were hanging from the roof just clangled together. Clangled? Did I just make a word up? They were clangling together, despite no draft coming in. And finally, at number 1 is the little girl. Now this one's from Naya, who said her and her family moved from the UK to an old beat up house in the US. And of course, all the regular things happen, like seeing bright lights in random places around the house, hearing footsteps, etc. When Naya was 6 years old, this little girl started waking her up every night, and she would do it by dancing on her chest of drawers. Now Naya was terrified. Her mum thought she was dreaming or joking, like it was going up at this point. People working on the house even complained about their tools being moved around and the feeling of being watched. One night, a year after they moved in, one of Naya's sister's friends came over for a sleepover, and she woke up screaming, claiming a little girl had pulled her off the bed, and she literally left their house at 4 AM and refused to ever come back. After doing some digging, her mum found out that a little girl had died of asthma in the house. Starting us off at number 10 is the repeat. This one was shared by Reddit user I Am Here to Say This, who said they lived in an old home for 5 years. years. The user's stepdad had known the man who lived in the house before them, and also that he had hung himself in the attic. Not really thinking anything of the story, the user just continued on life as usual. But 1 month into living at the house, he started hearing footsteps in the attic. And it wasn't just once. Like clockwork, every night at 3 AM he would hear footsteps pacing around in the attic. The steps were at a normal speed, but they were heavy. It kind of sounded like a man was thinking about something. After the footsteps, the user would hear a chair falling on the ground, and then absolutely nothing. Coming in at number 9 are the Doppelgangers Part 1. This one's from Reddit user 1LT Obvious, who was sure his family home was haunted by doppelgangers, and here's why. He recalled one time as a teenager when he was on MSN with his girlfriend with the webcam on. Do you guys remember the days when you'd like nudge people and play games on MSN? Either way, in the view you could see the user, his bedroom door behind him, the stairs going upstairs on the left, and the living room on the right. Now usually his little sister would fall asleep watching TV and then go to bed at some point in the night. At one point while they were messaging, the user saw his sister leave the living room to go upstairs, but she didn't make any sound, which he found really odd. They lived in an old house, so it would creak really loudly every time anyone went anywhere. He went to the living room to check, and his sister was there still sleeping, so alarm bells started going off. He then goes and sits back down and asks his girlfriend if she saw anything on the camera, and she was like, yeah, I saw your sister go upstairs. But my sister's sleeping on the couch, so who the hell just went upstairs? Do you guys see why I'm always on high alert? What is going on? At number 8 we have the Doppelgangers Part 2. From the same user, he shared another story involving his own ghostly doppelganger. There was one afternoon where his whole family was getting ready to go somewhere, and he was already sitting in the car with his mom. They were waiting for his little sister, and when she finally got into the car, she looked at him and was like, what the hell? Confused, the user asked her what was wrong, and she replied saying she thought he was still inside because before she left she yelled saying we're leaving, and she got a reply from him upstairs saying okay, I'll be down in a minute, when really he was in the car the whole time. No one else was in the house, yet his voice answered her. Nervous laughter. Moving house. Lol. Filling at number 7 slot is the Shadow. Now this one comes from Cotton Candy Sweet and Low, who was sure that he had a ghost living in his last house. There were just too many things that took place that couldn't be explained. Full coffee cans would be flung across the kitchen. His mum woke up in the middle of the night because she felt something pulling and pinching her legs. One night the user woke up because some force kept shaking his bed, and then he started hysterically crying till it stopped. But the worst thing he described took place one night at 3 AM. He was downstairs and he saw a shadow on the wall, assuming it was his mum, but when he turned around, no one was there. Then all of a sudden he felt this intense choking feeling, and the light started flickering before going off completely. Meanwhile, this guy is getting choked by something and cannot breathe. When the entity finally let him go, he ran to his mum's room and cried under the blankets all night. I would do the same, honestly. I would do the same. Now at number 6 is the Maid. This one comes from Reddit user Twig Snapper, whose uncle's house was located in very East New York. It was supposedly haunted because the family that owned it in the 1800s refused to give it to their stableman and decided to sell it instead. Sad and disappointed, the stableman's spirit stayed at the house, as did the maids. Now the family used to hear furniture being moved around at night, but just chalked it up to how old the house was. Naive. Simply naive. However, one weekend the uncle had a friend and her sister stay over, and waking up from mid-sleep that night, the friend saw the maid bringing towels down the stairs. Now she never saw her go back up, but a few minutes later she saw the maid bring a percolator downstairs as well. Not thinking much of it, and if anything impressed by the hired staff, she went back to sleep. When she woke up and went downstairs, she asked the uncle where the maid went, and the uncle was like, what? I don't have a maid. He then asked her what she looked like and then took her to an old portrait in the living room which was of the maid. The friend then said that was a woman she saw, and he replied saying she had been dead for over a century. But the grind never ends, does it? Coming in at number 5 is the Cat Hater. You already know I have beef with this one. As a cat lady, this one is just simply not on. Now this one was shared by Reddit user MT Swagger, who said there was some sort of entity in his house that either hated his cats or just liked to tease them. He recalled watching one of his cats walking through the dining area, but then all of a sudden her tail went straight and she was sliding backwards like she was being pulled. The cat was freaking out and meowing and actively trying to run, but she couldn't move. The entity held on for a few more seconds before letting the cat go. You cannot grab an animal by its tail and pull it. It hurts them. You guys, it hurts them. I may not be able to see this ghost entity, but I will call the police on them. I don't even care. At number 4 is the door that never closed. So this one was shared by Redditor iCountFish, who said he used to house sit his boss's house whenever he was out of the country. Now this house was a massive, I'm talking 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, the whole 9 yards. The user kind of exclusively lived on the first floor, but a month in he started hearing bumps and bangs coming from the second floor. He'd go up to check but would never really find anything, and the thing about the second floor was that there were a lot of unfinished areas, one of which was a walk-in closet that was attached to the unlit garage attic. I didn't know you could have a garage in the attic. Either way, one day he went inside to investigate and then locked the door as he left. 2 nights later he heard more noises and went up to check to find the door open. Not just unlocked, but open. And this continued to happen. The door would not stay shut or locked no matter what. At one point he even locked it and pushed a bed up against it to find the door unlocked yet again, and the bed moved. Like, I knew ghosts could move smaller things, but a bed? Damn. Zam, Zaddy. Filling at number 3 slot is the College Nightmare Part 1. So this one's from MCPIKE on Reddit, who said he lived in a haunted house with his friends while he was in college. He had so many stories to share, but I tried picking the best ones. One night he woke up at 3 AM fuming because his roommate's door kept opening and slamming shut. He shouted from his bed telling his roommate to stop before realizing he was the only person in the house that weekend. But as soon as he finished yelling, the doors stopped moving as well. Instead, the hippie beads hanging on his own door started swing violently against his door for an hour before stopping. He also shared that anytime anything strange happened around the house, it would start smelling like this strong, flowery old lady sort of perfume. So I'm guessing the entity haunting them was an old woman from the days of yore. What does that even mean? The days of yore. I don't know, I heard it. I used it. Now at number 2 is the College Nightmare Part 2. Now another really odd thing with this college house was the fact that it had a door built into the floor that led to the basement, but it was always hidden by carpet, so no one else other than the tenants knew it was there. However, things in the house would continuously go missing and wind up in the basement in the coal chute down there. On another occasion, one of the roommates was playing video games at night when he saw a visible cloud of mist travel from the kitchen into the bathroom then disappear into the basement door. Another night, the last roommate up was locking the doors and closing the lights before going to bed. As he was walking, he heard someone breathe into his ear, and initially he thought it was one of the roommates, but they were all asleep. He turned around, saw no one there, at himself, and then ran to his room. And finally, at number 1 is the previous owner. This one comes from the Toenail Collector on Reddit, and I honestly hope you do not collect your toenails. I'm gagging. Either way, he shared that as a teen he lived in an old farmhouse that his family were remodeling. One day he was working under his truck while only being supported by a jack, which I feel like is pretty dumb. Either way, midway he really had no reason to get out from underneath, but all of a sudden he felt this overwhelming urge to get out. So he did, and less than 2 seconds later the jack slipped and the truck fell to the ground. Now had he been under there, he would have straight up died. So he ended up telling his parents about it later on that day, and his mum started sobbing, saying the previous owner had died under a vehicle in the exact same spot. The family would also see moving shadows around the house and music coming from upstairs despite no one playing it. One morning his mum was making breakfast and she went to get something from a cabinet, and when she turned around all the forks were stabbed into the table and then bent like right angles. Like, to know what's going on there. We're just gonna sweep it under the rug. Okay, I guess so.
Starting off this countdown, we have Lucy Hale. Now, this pretty little liar has experienced numerous paranormal occurrences in her home. Although she claims that nothing big has occurred, it's the little unexplained events that freak her out. Lucy claims that one time at 1 AM her coffee maker turned on by itself. I mean, hey, maybe the ghost just wanted a cup of joe. She also says that doors close by themselves and her dog barks unexplainably at random things. She also says that something will continuously trigger her motion detector without there being anything in sight. So she is convinced that her house is haunted. Next up at number 9 we have Gigi Hadid. Now this model has claimed that spooky things would happen in her childhood home. When she was younger she lived in a really old house and her room was in the attic. Apparently Gigi would hear weird noises coming from her closet. Her dad said that there was once an old lady that lived in the house. So Gigi and her sister thought that they were communicating with this old lady. Then she also said that every year she would have the same reoccurring dream. The dream would take place in her house, but the lighting would be more dark and eerie and it would be covered in fog. Then she said that people in suits with weird shaped heads would walk down the stairs towards her. I think we need a dream expert to analyze this. In our 8th spot we have the mansion. This next mansion was literally named The Mansion. How creative. And what's with celebrities naming their homes? Well, anyways, this home is owned by music producer Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin uses his home as a recording studio, and bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Linkin Park have recorded there. However, it is haunted. Hey, maybe the ghost just likes music. So, rumor has it that in 1918, one of the previous owners pushed his lover off of the balcony. Artists that have stayed over at the mansion have reported witnessing a bunch of scary activities. Some have seen orbs, others have seen doors opening and closing by themselves, and others have heard whispering in the walls. Dang, those ghosts are lucky. Like, they get to hear songs before they're even released to the public. Coming in at number 7, we have the PICKFAIR Mansion. Back in the 1920s, Mary Pickford was a well-known silent film actress. Her and her husband Douglas Fairbanks were an iconic couple. Now, they purchased a 22-room mansion which they named the PICKFAIR. This mansion is currently on sale for $60 million. So, if you have that kind of money and don't mind rooming with a ghost, then this mansion is for you. So apparently a spirit of a servant roams this property. It has been reportedly seen on several occasions by different individuals. Now in 1936 the couple divorced and Mary kept the estate and shared it with her new husband Charles Rogers. When Mary passed away, Rogers was visited by a woman in a long white gown. He claimed that this was Mary herself visiting him. When the mansion was resold, the spirit sightings increased. People saw the woman in the white gown along with a male entity in the front hallway. They also would see an apparition of a figure holding sheet music. Now, this home was demolished and a new home was built on top. Since the demolition, the sightings have apparently stopped. Honestly, I'm sure there are some people that wouldn't mind having ghosts as roommates. They wouldn't eat your food and they wouldn't be too noisy. Up next at number 6 we have the Jenner Mansion. Apparently, Kendall Jenner is convinced that her mother's mansion is haunted. She explains that Kylie and herself would hear footsteps on the roof when no one was home. Honestly, it would not surprise me if it was just the paparazzi. She also claims that Kylie's shower would turn on by itself. Now, Kendall also admitted that her family would toy around with an Ouija board. One day, they got in contact with a spirit that answered all of their questions accurately. Although Chris does not believe this, Kendall is completely convinced a ghost lurks around her mother's house. Honestly, at least this ghost sounds harmless. From what I gathered, it likes to shower and be clean and likes to do a little tap dancing on the roof. Nothing to worry about. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Adele's mansion. Now, rumor has it, yes that's a pun, that Adele lived in a haunted house. The mansion was worth $11 million and was located in Sussex, England. Although Adele has not witnessed turning tables, she has witnessed other creepy occurrences. Adele said that she used to hear strange, unexplainable noises. She even said that objects around her house would fall down. As a result, she always felt uneasy and even hired a nighttime bodyguard and upped her security system. Now, Adele only lived there for 2 years before moving out. Before Adele lived there, it was a convent with its own chapel. If Adele lived there longer, maybe the ghost would have said hello from the other side. I don't apologize for all those Adele song puns. Comment down below if you caught them all. Up next at number 4 we have Matthew McConaughey. Alright, Matthew McConaughey. So during his interview with Jennifer Garner for the movie Ghost of Girlfriends Past, Matthew told the interviewer all about his haunted home. Now, Matthew claimed that his home was haunted by a woman named Madame Blue. He claims that she didn't seem like a happy or friendly spirit. But Matthew stood his ground and told her, "You can move around all you want, but I'm not going anywhere." Okay, he's pretty brave. Now, every time that Matthew had a guest over, they too would say that they thought they saw or felt this woman. Now, apparently one day Matthew heard a noise coming from a room and he went to investigate without any clothes on. Since that day, the ghost has made peace with Matthew and they get along. So maybe that's the new way to ward off ghosts. In our 3rd spot, we have ALYSON HANNIGAN. This How I Met Your Mother star claims that her LA home is haunted by a male ghost. Her and her friends have both seen this ghost multiple times. The first instance was when ALYSON's friends saw the ghost and said, "I don't mean to alarm you, but I just saw a man follow us out of the house." I love how she said, "I don't mean to alarm you." Like, of course it's going to. But ALYSON believes that it is a pleasant ghost. She claims that it's not somebody that died in the home because there's a law in LA that when you buy a house, if somebody died, then they have to disclose that to you. ALYSON also shared that one night she saw the silhouette of the man standing in her bathroom doorway. She thought that it was her husband, but turns out he was asleep beside her. ALYSON is not afraid of this ghost at all. In fact, she really wants to learn its name. She has stated that she wants to put a chalkboard in the area that they see him the most to see if he'll write down his name. Sounds like a good plan, until he writes down something creepy. Coming in at number 2, we have the LALAURIE house. Now, this house was said to be owned by Madame LALAURIE. She tortured and murdered endless slaves in her mansion. It is said that one night a fire occurred in the mansion. When help arrived, they found several tortured individuals in her house. Madame fled and was never seen again. Now, this house was once owned by America's own national treasure, Nicolas Cage. He claimed that while others have a beachfront property, he has a ghost front property. Apparently, it is haunted by several of the tortured individuals that once lived there. But apparently Cage loved living there. He even said that one of his greatest memories from when he was a kid was from the haunted mansion at Anaheim in New Orleans Square. He then felt that living there was fulfilling his childhood fantasy. And in our number 1 spot, we have Loretta Lynn. Loretta Lynn is an American country music legend with multiple hit songs. Now, her mansion, located in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, is said to be haunted by multiple ghosts. Now, Loretta herself has even claimed that she has some sort of psychic abilities and can see ghosts. So in her home, she has heard weird noises and has seen apparitions. Even her daughters have seen a ghost of a Confederate soldier in her home. After doing research, Lynn discovered that her home used to be the site of a Civil War battle. It is also said that 19 soldiers are buried on the grounds. Now, Lynn claims to have seen a young woman weeping on her property. She believes that this is the ghost of Beulah Anderson, who lost her baby. Now, to go even further, Lynn has even conducted seances in her home. One time she got in contact with a spirit named Anderson. Anderson got angry and started shaking the table before it broke from being slammed to the floor. Apparently, James Anderson was one of the original owners of the home.